After the war, Germany was divided. One part came under the control of the Soviet Union, the other under the administration of the allies of the anti-Hitler coalition. With the division of territories into two camps, society was also divided. The Eastern Communist part fell completely under Moscow's propaganda. Fearing the spread of socialism deeper into Europe, the Americans and the British made considerable efforts to keep the Eastern Bloc countries under close watch. The Gehlen organization, led by Wehrmacht General Reinhard Gehlen, handled intelligence before the West German service was established. He is considered one of the most legendary spies of the Cold War era. In the 1940s, he was recruited by the Americans and sent to Berlin to spy on Soviet military forces in Eastern Europe. There, he began recruiting former Nazi military into his ranks. He gradually built the Gehlen organization, which became the Americans' eyes and ears in Germany.
The Gehlen organization included people who held high positions in the SS. Some of them personally took part in shootings of Jews, and some even carried out bloody massacres involving Jewish prisoners.
Gehlen's agents monitored the movements of Soviet troops across all borders of Eastern Europe. The gathered information was sent to the US. By the way, the American intelligence network in Germany was a post-war project called Paperclip, through which Washington recruited former Nazis into its ranks. Reinhard Gehlen is one of many who worked for the US. His espionage work involved constant monitoring of communism and its spread.
The urgent need for intelligence on Soviet Russia was the reason for the creation of the Gehlen organization. The American CIA supervised it for many years, closely cooperating on all matters related to information exchange. In fact, Gehlen's agents were under full control of the CIA. However, in 1956, with the emergence of the BND, American influence weakened.
In 1956, West Germany decided to create its own intelligence service. Thus, the BND, or the Federal Intelligence Service of Germany, was established. It was created based on the Gehlen organization, former Nazi criminals. And the intelligence service operates to this day. Reinhard Gehlen became the first director. The agency managed to establish itself as the most knowledgeable intelligence service on Middle East and Soviet Union matters. Partly because Gehlen, while in the Wehrmacht, was responsible for the analytical department studying Moscow. In his position at the BND, he continued the focus on studying Russia. By the way, the process of creating the BND began in 1952 thanks to the Americans.
The negotiations were secret, participants did not reveal their names, and discussed funding and the name of the future agency. After the meeting, there were no minutes or written records of the discussion.
The first task of the newly established agency was spying on the GDR. At first, a little over 300 people worked at the BND. Even such a small number of people was able to track all aspects of life in the GDR so effectively that agents knew the number of hospital beds and the load capacity of bridges in the neighboring country. All this was done to be as prepared as possible in case of armed aggression by Moscow against West Germany.
The information obtained by BND agents in no way harmed the neighboring GDR. Almost half of the agents from the Gehlen organization worked for the KGB. So, formally, most of the data they obtained was only because Soviet spies allowed it.
In August 1961, the situation with obtaining information from the neighboring GDR became more difficult. The construction of the Berlin Wall began. It not only divided society for decades but also made information leaks almost impossible. Internal purges began within the ranks of the hostile Stasi intelligence service, which ended with the expulsion of BND agents from their ranks. Reinhard Gehlen's position as BND director noticeably weakened, and the agency began to decline. Although he never admitted this in his memoirs, instead taking credit for the agency's greatest achievements.
Reinhard Gehlen was never a good undercover agent or leader. This is the essence of his failures. The Gehlen organization and later the BND excelled in military economic intelligence on the GDR and Soviet forces. But these were mostly observations, not infiltrations into their ranks.
With the construction of the wall, BND agents partially shifted their focus to the Middle East, gathering information for the US. On one hand, by making access to the GDR more difficult, agents began spying directly on the Soviet Union. The tradition has survived to this day. The Federal Intelligence Service of Germany is considered one of the best experts on the Middle East and Russia. 1972 forever changed not only Germany but the entire world. The Munich Olympics ended tragically for the Israeli athletes. Palestinian terrorists first killed 2 athletes and took 9 others hostage. After a failed attempt by German special forces to rescue the hostages, they were shot. The terrorist attack became a powerful impetus for the reorganization of the German intelligence service. They began a new restructuring. The number one priority became the fight against terrorism. Agents began monitoring everything to prevent possible attacks.
Intelligence agencies have all the capabilities to monitor any information. For example, they search for what's needed using keywords. They have the equipment to listen and track everything. Not only on the internet but also phones, faxes and mobile communications.
But even this didn't help them prevent the attack on a club in West Berlin in 1986, where American soldiers often gathered. Terrorists planted a bomb near the bar that took 3 lives, 2 American soldiers and a Turkish woman. More than 200 people were injured. The explosion blew a hole in the floor and caused the ceiling and walls to collapse. Initially, German intelligence believed the attackers were members of the left-wing radical terrorist group RAF, the Red Army faction, which operated in Germany until 1998. However, later the responsibility was claimed by Lebanese terrorists.
Intelligence data indicates the Lebanese intelligence agency was involved in the explosion. The terrorists are detained, 3 men and a woman. 2 of them are a married couple. They are German citizens. The other 2 are Palestinian and Lebanese. Prosecutors allege Libya sought revenge for the sinking of 2 of its ships in the Gulf of Sirte.
Since 1990, the BND began spying on German journalists. They listened to their phones, tracked their movements and their circle of communication. The main reason was the leak of information about Germany's interests in the Iraq War. After several publications appeared in the media, most journalists with connections to BND came under close scrutiny. They even tried several times to sue or accuse the intelligence services of encroaching on private life. However, in vain. Officially, surveillance of media representatives by agents ceased in 2005. At least they themselves said so. Although espionage is explained by necessity,
The Federal Intelligence Service of Germany is responsible for detecting foreign espionage activities at an early stage in order to limit or prevent damage.
the BND has many departments. Each has its own role that helps effectively track the information. For the most part, the intelligence agency operates abroad. In its own country and around the world, the agency has more than 300 branches. In 1967, they successfully predicted the course and outcome of the Six-Day War between Israel and the Arab countries. And in 1968, the intervention of Moscow and the Warsaw Pact countries in Czechoslovakia. However, since the 2000s, the agents have focused their activities on Middle Eastern affairs.
During the 2006 war in Lebanon, BND agents secretly conducted negotiations between Israel and the Lebanese paramilitary Islamist organization Hezbollah. The success of the negotiations helped facilitate a prisoner exchange between Israel and Hezbollah in 2008.
Today, BND's espionage has mostly shifted to the digital realm. Control is maintained not only over civilian industrial German companies but also over military and government ones. For example, Airbus, which manufactures airplanes, including military ones, recently complained about espionage by the BND. Siemens has a similar story, and these are just examples of 2 economic giants. There are hundreds of such companies worldwide, and most of them have access to users' personal data. And if a company has, then BND agents also have it.
The intelligence agency today has special departments dedicated to industrial espionage. They use special systems, mainly on the internet. Most companies have internet access, so hackers working for intelligence agencies have easy access to any data from these companies.
A story that the American CIA dubbed the intelligence coup of the century. In 1952, the company Crypto AG was established in Switzerland. It specialized in information security and manufactured encryption devices. More than 100 countries used their products. Some for encrypting military communications, others for securing the communications of governments and presidents. In short, the company's products were meant to protect state secrets. But this company was controlled by the CIA and the BND. All this time, they knew the Allies' plans, held the closest secrets, and monitored affairs not just in the Middle East and Europe, but worldwide. Always a few steps ahead. They had the necessary codes to crack encrypted messages. The global espionage operation was called Rubicon.
The company employed about 230 people. They had offices in Abidjan, Abu Dhabi, Buenos Aires, Kuala Lumpur, and Muscat, and they conducted business all around the world. The owners of Crypto AG were unknown.
The Germans withdrew from participation in 1993. The Americans continued spying on the world until 2018, when the company was shut down. But the situation has not changed much. The American NSA, the National Security Agency, sold the Germans special equipment to spy on their own citizens. The Germans know about it and, of course, are outraged. But, as agents like to say, the intelligence gathered by the BND helps shape foreign policy and national security policy. It helps protect German interests around the world. They are criticized for this because, while gathering various information, the agents may indeed protect their interests abroad. But when it comes to protecting their own citizens at home from terrorist threats, they fail.